So recently a video I put out went unexpectedly viral for my channel. Typically my videos get about 30 to 50 views, and this one in a span of about a week got 3.8K views, and I gained over 100 subscribers just from this one video. So entirely unexpected, but I'm also very grateful for this because the topic of that video was about the spiritual community, especially more of like the new age type communities that are very into, terms like starseed, old soul, identifying as empaths, and how, we're headed to 5D. Earth is ascending to 5D, and we're also going to have, aliens are going to come, the Palladians, the, whatever alien races are going to come, and we're going to advance into this golden age. And the video was essentially playfully and also graciously trolling the spiritual community and offering an alternative. And overall, the feedback was entirely positive. And so to me, that is highly encouraging, which is that I see more and more people within the spiritual communities beginning to wake up to some of the more infantile, superficial spiritual teachings in the New Age. There were a few comments that were more negative, and that's what I'll be going into in this video, is to highlight the infantile psychology within some of these spiritual communities and what is needed for the people who are still kind of attached to that way of thinking. So let me pull up the comment that this person left. So in this person's comment on that video, they wrote, "Oh golly, the human psyche seeks confirmation bias? Who would have thought beyond the 5D thinkers? Thank you for calling our private details in our private space, making people feel unwelcomed and guilty over vague things. The shame ideology is deep in this wild child, but they're almost there. This isn't it, my guy." So this comment perfectly captures the infantile psychology that exists within some of the people in these spiritual communities. I'm going to break down a little bit further what I mean by infantile psychology. But first, I'd just like for you to consider something, you the viewer. Consider if you've ever met somebody who called themselves spiritual. Like that's perhaps one of the first things they said out their mouth. It's like, I'm a very spiritual person. They've got the clothes, they've got the crystals, they know the lingo, right? They know how to say the exact right words that to you are like, this seems like some of the spiritual stuff I've been reading and learning about. But there's this feeling that just doesn't quite feel right to you. Rather than getting the sense that this person who calls themselves spiritual actually embodies the spirit of what they're speaking to and living it out in their lives, you kind of get the sense like, I think this person is kind of just playing dress up, cosplaying as somebody who thinks they're spiritual, what they think sounds spiritual, what they think looks spiritual. And you have this kind of sense like, I don't think this is the real thing. And perhaps, you've found yourself in some environments where the group consensus of people is hypnotized. It's like they are hypnotized by some spiritual guru who is in the center. And this guru's teachings has, some good messages, but also some superficial feel-good messages. And you kind of can't shake that feeling of like, yeah, they're saying some things that are entirely valid that I myself, resonate with. But there's like a kernel of truth, and wrapped around it is also a lot of distortions of these spiritual teachings. And that can cause some bit of doubt because now you're comparing yourself with the people around you and also what you're hearing the spiritual assigned title of spiritual guru is saying. Like, well, like the people around me seem to be buying into this. Like, is there something wrong with me? Am I not advanced enough? Am I not in 5D thinking because, I don't seem to be in the same group hypnosis as everybody else? And it's like, you perhaps start to doubt, like, well, there's a bit of truth. So the part that I don't agree with, or the part that doesn't quite sit well with me, maybe that's my shadow. Maybe that's a growth edge that I really need to lean into. And that's a blind spot. And so there starts to be this kind of self-doubt at the same time. You're like, but still something feels quite off. Okay? If you felt any of that, then you are likely tuning into something in the spiritual communities that I think a good number of people have felt or do feel, but haven't been able to really kind of proclaim, like yeah, I'm going to name it as it is. So what happens when you actually point these things out? That's where you get the comment that I did, where people in the spiritual communities start to object. Right? So this person wrote, calling our private details in our private space. That's an interesting comment. Right? Where does that word private come from? Because it's not like I just jumped into your community that you never invited me into. I created a video with an idea that I wanted to share. So if this person uses the word private details in our private space, my guess is this person felt seen in a confronting way. And rather than metabolize and deal with those feelings of, shoot, somebody is calling something out that hits a little too close to home. Rather than dealing with that, they project that onto me. So I am now the villain. I am now the asshole in their story of, okay, you're making me unwelcome. You're putting out guilt and shame. This is a great example of how some people in these New Age spiritual communities don't know how to deal with the heavy emotions or heavier truths. And so they completely dismiss it, right? It's positive vibes only, right? Love and light only. And I've also seen this in some of the older traditional religious communities as well, be it Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. There's this sense of like, yeah, no, like all our focus should be on God and this higher spiritual stuff, but let's ignore some of the heavier shadows within our own psyche. And so what actually happens is then you lose out on so much of this material that can actually lead to a lot of growth and deeper self-knowledge. Now, here's what I mean by the infantile psychology in these spiritual communities. Anytime you want to take some sort of a shortcut, like, oh, I'm going to ascend, I'm going to just become enlightened, right? I'm going to dissolve my ego, and the alien saviors, they're going to come, they're going to fix our mess, we're going to go into the golden era, and yeah, it's time to quantum leap, y'all. We're going to quantum leap into the 5D timeline, soul fam. Your ascension, if you want to call it that, is incredibly superficial. There is no firm roots or grounding to it. And Carl Jung spoke to this very well when he said that no tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. These firm roots are what a lot of the New Age spiritual communities and also some of the traditional religious communities are missing because they're so concerned with heaven and ascension and only the positive and only praise God that they don't want to look at the less pleasant aspects of their own psyche, their beliefs, the behaviors, the repeating patterns in their lives, the false identities that they are operating from. And so when you ignore that work, it can't help but be superficial. Your ascension, your enlightenment is going to be superficial. And this leads to spiritual narcissism and grandiosity. Kind of like, some of those manifestation coaches that have become so popular over the years. And they're like, I'm going to charge you for a 60-minute session $7,777 because these angel numbers signify that you're getting the quantum codes that's going to teach you how to become a millionaire or something like that. Or a lot of the Westerners who now flock to South America or places where they do, plant medicine ceremonies, especially with ayahuasca. And after one plant medicine ceremony, they're like, oh, I'm a shaman now, and I'm going to start leading my own plant medicine ceremonies after just one drink, right? And now you're an advanced shaman. Okay, right? Do you see the spiritual narcissism and grandiosity? And even the YouTube video where I was poking fun of the 144,000, right? There's that sense of I'm special. I'm one of God's chosen ones. And really, it's just the ego concocting a sense of specialness in some identity to inflate one's sense of self so that because that is so big and eclipses everything else. Like, oh, then I don't have to look at my shadows. I don't have to look at the things that are less pleasant to acknowledge about myself and my motivations for what I do in the world. Right? And so for these people in the spiritual communities, the shadows are going to leak out in diagonal ways. Many of you have probably heard the stories of how these shadows leak out in diagonal ways, such as spiritual gurus who took sexual advantage of their students. Same thing with some pastors and priests. Or the people who embezzle money. Like, oh, I have this, it's a front, right? It's like, oh no, this organization and this mission is to carry out God's divine purpose and we're going to spread this and blah, blah, blah. And really it was just to collect money for themselves. Or you might have heard stories of spiritual gurus or religious figures who in public they are very much praised, but then later it's found out behind closed doors that they are a menace to their own family. This is the consequence of ignoring the shadow work. Now, this doesn't mean spiritual gurus, pastors, priests, manifestation coaches, or shamans are inherently bad, evil, or wrong. It doesn't mean that at all. But if they skip over the deeper shadow work, really confronting themselves, looking at the things that are less pleasant to look at, either within themselves or within the collective, then there is a severe lack of depth. Right? It's just like that tree that Carl Jung spoke about. It doesn't have any roots. And so if you are so fixated, like, no, I'm only the positive, only good vibes, I only want to look at ascension, then you will be seduced by what some people have termed the false light. Many people prefer the kind lie, the nice lie, over a more difficult truth. And so what I want to encourage people towards, what I want to encourage you, the viewer, towards, is to have both. Right? You can have your mind fixed upon heaven and ascension, but know that the work also requires a descension of going down, right, into the dark, into the roots. Some people like to use the term incension, going within, right? Whatever you want to use, you have to have both, to look at the light and to look at the dark within you, because it all exists within us. And when you can do that work, then you will cultivate a level of depth, clarity, wisdom, and humility that you will not sense in people who only want to look at the light, only want to go towards ascension. When I reflect on aspects of my own spiritual journey, the journeys of clients that I've worked with, and of other people whose books I've read, it was not all love and light. There were some very dark, difficult passages, initiations to have to go through that are not Instagram worthy at all. They're not all glamorous and glitter. And these are the things that I think so few people talk about in these spiritual communities. Like, all right, well, I just put on the fedora hat, put on some white robe, I got my mala beads and some crystals, and like, hey, this is what spirituality is. No, that's the commodified version, an image you'd like to sell. That's not the real work at all. The real work is a lot less glamorous. It can get incredibly gnarly. And you can't just use the excuse of, anytime you face some difficult truth or you feel you're being tested, like, oh, it's a demon, it's a devil, it's something bad out there doing this to me. Like, no, you've got your own inner demons to work through. You've got your own inner demons to confront. And when you actually confront them with compassion, with courage, you'll find that what initially seemed like some sort of a demon or something scary is actually a tremendous gift. It is what Carl Jung called the golden shadow, that there is medicine in the shadow that you didn't want to look at, that once you truly sit with it, confront it, you find the deeper wisdom, the deeper gold there, and you become more whole within yourself. Instead of splitting between, no, all the bad is out there and all the good is here, you're able to integrate, like, no, this is within me, but I am the master of all of it. And because you have become whole within yourself, no longer divided or fragmented, then how you walk in the world is completely different. You walk forward with clarity, with wisdom, and you get to impact other people simply just through your presence. Now that you know what infantile psychology looks like, feels like in these spiritual communities, I want to hit on, okay, so what does the real work look like? If it's not just jumping into ascension and bypassing all the stuff that is unpleasant to confront within oneself, what does the real work look like? And I think the best way to illustrate what it looks like is to use a personal example. So I used to be deeply entrenched in something called nice guy syndrome. I was a people pleaser, but especially with women. My identity was tied up in, does she like me? Does she approve of me? Am I making her happy? And I completely repressed my own desires, especially my own sexual desires as a man. And so anytime I approached women, I approached it with like the friend thing, right? I want to be nice to you so that you'll like me and approve of me. And so you know that, yeah, I'm one of the good guys. I'm not like those douchebags, chads who just pumps and dumps you. Like, no, I'm the one you can confide in. I will listen and I will comfort you. Right? So there was an inflated, elevated image I had of myself. Right? I'm one of the good ones. While at the same time, there was a deep sense of inferiority. If I'm not enough, I'm not strong, I'm not desired like these other men, because man, she'll still keep going back to the Chad. And I was holding a lot of inner turmoil because partly I was afraid of my own sexual desires because I saw the harm that other men's sexual desires have done to some women. There have been many women who have shared like, yeah, I've experienced harm and sexual assault and abuse at the hands of a man. I'm like, gosh, that's awful. But if that sexual desire within that man also exists within me, then geez, this is dangerous, and I don't want to be dangerous to a woman. So let me just sever this part of myself. Let me emasculate myself, right? Let me neuter myself. And I was building up a lot of inner psychic tension between, but I am a sexual being, I am a sexual man, I have desire, I want to be more than friends, but no, that's not okay. And I was fighting within myself, and then I would project that onto women. Like, oh, these women don't really want a good man, they don't want a nice man, they just say that, right? You hear all the bitterness and resentment that was fomenting. I shared all of this with my therapist. I faced all of this when I was going through my grad program in counseling psychology. I also faced it in men's groups, men's retreats. All of this forced me to confront myself very uncomfortably. I still remember one of the sentences my therapist said, which was, Roy, you're the common denominator in all of these scenarios, right? You got friend zoned by her, by her, by her, by her. Who's the same? What's the same thing in all of these situations? It's you. And that was very difficult to take in. But he was telling the truth. It was the harsh, difficult truth of, yeah, I'm the common denominator in all of these scenarios. So I cannot blame women. I have to see the reality that these women are all mirrors reflecting something about myself that I have not been conscious of. So all these projections can now become a gift where I take those projections back and I look at, okay, what does my psyche want me to become conscious of? Right? And this is what Carl Jung talks about, is making the unconscious conscious, because unless you do, your unconscious will continue to direct your life and you will call it fate. This is what it looks like to do the real work. And this is how you can reach that inner sense of wholeness so that you can serve the world from a place of clarity and integrity. And you're no longer concerned about, okay, how special am I as one of God's chosen, or, one of God's greatest warriors? That just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not an identity that's interesting to you, because ultimately it's not about, am I a good person or not? It's, am I living fully as myself, fully in integrity and my own authenticity? That becomes the North Star. That becomes the compass that directs you and how you live and function in the world. So if this is the kind of work that you would like to do, you recognize, like, yeah, there's a lot of potholes to try to swerve around going through these spiritual communities, because there's a lot of wonky stuff out there, and you would like to engage in the real work that is both deeply embodied, has you looking at your shadows, but also not consumed in your shadows, because that's another extreme. Some people get so identified with, I'm a shadow worker, so I'm always looking at my shadows and going into the dark, the difficult, the heavy. Like, no, that's the paradox. You have both the light and the dark. And if this is the work that you want to do with a community of like-minded souls, then that is exactly what I've designed my Skool community for. It's called the Academy for Psycho-Spiritual Self-Mastery. And when you join, you'll get access to my 2 signature courses. You'll get access to live Q&A calls. And this is just a place where you can do this work that I think is becoming harder and harder to find access to in our day and age. Because with the glamorification, with the commodification of a lot of the spiritual stuff, like, just ascension, quantum leap, jump, and all that stuff, it's lost some of the depth. It's lost some of the depth that I think people prior really did a good job of emphasizing, like a Carl Jung or a Robert A. Johnson. So if that's of interest to you, then I very much invite you to join us in my Skool community, and I can't wait to see you there.